Well, hello, and welcome. If you are watching live on YouTube, I've got comments open, so I'll be able to take those. If this is not actually live, please go check down in the description, and there's a link to the Beyond Code Bootcamp playlist that will have, for example, this part edited out and be a little bit shorter and have any technical difficulties resolved. Tonight, should have led with this. Tonight, what we're doing is we're talking about how to take what we did in the last video, which was we created a blog, but we had a couple of different individual files, 4 or 5 files in a directory, and we converted each one from Markdown to HTML. And we're going to redo that, but we're going to use a loop so that we don't have to have a big long list of files. We can just loop over everything that's in the directory. All right. So with that out of the way, I want to make sure that you know, again, you can leave a comment on YouTube if you are watching this live. If you're on Facebook or Twitch, head over to YouTube just because it's too hard to manage all the different chats coming in. And then, make sure to check the description if you want the playlist. With that out of the way, hello, and welcome back. Tonight, we are going back over what we did before, which was making the blog with several different files, but we had all those files in one directory. So we're gonna transform our process to use a script that goes through each file and converts it in a loop rather than us having to potentially list out 5, 6, 7, 20 different files. If at any point during this you've got that aha moment where something really clicks for you, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to open up your notes at gist.github.com so you can take yourself some Markdown notes to add to your blog and that you can have those to help you remember. So here we are. I am back at my local directory, and what I'm actually going to do is we talked about rsync. So I'm going to use rsync to log in to my server and copy files over. I'm not actually going to log in, but it's going to log in to copy the files over using my key that we set up before. So I'm just going to copy those over real quick right here into an SRV directory. We'll see those appear right there. There they are. Okay, so these are the same files that we had the other day. And there's even a little build script there. I'm going to take a look at that and see if that's the same one that we had before. Hopefully it is. So there's our build script. Oh, that's the answer. We don't want to look at the answer yet. All right. So I'm going to go into, I'm using push D to go into my website directory where we have our files. Now we have all of our HTML files. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those. I think I'm going to leave the index. So let me see what does that index look like right now. Yep, we're going to leave that index just to hold on to for a second. But I'm going to delete the other ones so that this is nice and clean for us. All right, so now we've just got our index, and then we've got our source directory, and we've got our index in there that we made by hand. So just so we can take a look, I'm going to do cat and source index.md. This is what our home page for our blog looked like. Let me see if I still have that up. I think I do, yeah. So this is what it looked like. All right. And we are going to redo this, but using a script. So let me clear that out. I'm going to create a file called build.sh. The .sh is to represent that it's a bash file in the same way .md represents that it's a markdown file. And let's see here. Now before, actually, I might need to close this out to show something else. I'll go ahead and put in two of these. Actually, I've got them over here. I'm just going to copy and paste so I don't have to take all that time typing it out. Okay, so this should build our how domains work article, and then we've got a how to create a server article and a couple more. I'm just going to start with this and we're going to modify it. So what we got is this is going to create, well, it's going to add to a file how domains work, which means it's going to create it if it doesn't exist. Same thing here. And we want to find a way to just be able to read all the files in the directory. I'm gonna colon WQ bang out of this file, and I'm going to show you again what's in our source directory. And here's something else I want to do. We covered this briefly, but you can use a star as a wildcard when you're scripting. And it works in most shells like Fish and Bash as well. So if I do an ls of src, it shows me everything that's in src. But if I do star.md, it's only going to match files that end in md. So there we get to see that. Likewise, if I just do things that start with intro, then I can see only the files that start with intro. So this is how we can get a list of multiple things, is we can use a directory name and a star, a pattern that has a star in it to match multiple things. So let me Command K here to clear out. And then I'm going to just take a quick look over there. Yeah. So we go into build.sh again. And what we want to do first is identify what's repetitive that we can pull out into a variable if we could run this multiple times. So what we have is how domains work is here, and it's also here. So that's what I'm going to pull out into my variable. So we're going to call this my my article, I think is what we'll call it. So it's a blog article, so that's what we'll call it. And I've got how domains work. And this is how we create a variable. I like to always start mine with my and underscore for any variables that are local to the script. It's very common that you'll see variables that are in all caps like path or env or other variables like that. And those are typically variables that work in more than one place. So anything that's inside of a script, I start with my underscore if that's where the variable works and nowhere else. I recommend you do the same. And then anytime we use a variable, it needs to be in quotes. We'll go into the reasons for that probably when we dig into Bash a little bit later. And then we use a variable by putting a $ and then putting brackets. So these are curly braces or curly brackets. And then we put the variable name. So here we are. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Notice we leave the .md. All right, and then we put that there. And part of the reason that we use these brackets, and these are double quotes, mind you. Variables do not work in single quotes. They only work in double quotes in Bash. So we've got these curly brackets so that if I needed to do something like this, say if the dot were part of the name, if we did it like that, you know, imagine that we defined a variable like this, well, then you'd have this problem of how do you put just a couple of letters at the end. So we always use, the brackets because it makes it distinct from other characters that are nearby, and we don't have to worry about there being a typo of that sort. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and comment this out. I want to show you that this runs. And actually, there's one other thing we always need to do whenever we create a script. I can't believe I forgot. The very first thing the script needs to start with is set -e and set -u. And what this does is it turns on error reporting, and it turns on error reporting for undefined variables. Basically, this just makes it so that we get an error instead of things continuing to run when there's an error and not knowing what we did wrong. So particularly important for typos. So hopefully what we're going to see is no errors. Let me take a listing here. Okay, so I have no blog articles in this directory. I'm going to run my build script. And then I'm going to take a look. And now I've got howdomainswork.html. So that's working great. Okay. So we know that we want to be able to, oh, and another thing I forgot. We should always put single quotes around the value that we assign to variables. This is particularly important in case there's ever a space or something in there. And if it has a single quote in it, I can show you what we do about that later. But we just, we have to end the quote and then escape it. I think I did show that in another video. Any case, so we've assigned our variable, we're using our variable, everything's hunky-dory, but now we want to be able to use all of the files that are in an SRC directory. So we're going to use what's called a for loop. And in Bash, for loops are meant to work on files. In programming languages, they might work on other types of lists because in programming you have lots of different types of lists to choose from. But in Bash, scripting languages are meant to be able to work with files and folders. So we're going to do for, And we're going to call this my file in, and then we're going to give it what we want to search in, which is going to be, actually, I think I need to not use quotes on this because we want the asterisks to be able to work as a wildcard. So for my file in src/star.md, this is saying I'm going to make a list out of all the files that are in source star.md, and I'm going to call each one is going to be assigned to the variable my file. So every time this loop that we're about to create runs, that's how it's going to work. So I think what we do next is do, and then we put a done, and this defines our loop. I'm going to indent here so that we can read this a little easier. I'm actually just going to go ahead and get rid of that one. So for every file in source that's matching this pattern, source/star.md, from where we are, from the present, where the current working directory, we're going to do, and we're going to run our Markdown converter, comrack, on the Markdown file, and we're going to spit out the HTML file. All right. Now there's one other thing that we need to do here, which is that since we're going to be running this multiple times, that file might already exist. So what we're going to want to do is make sure that we delete that file. Very important anytime we're doing a remove, to make sure that we're using quotes and that we are in fact removing the things that we want to do. Typically what I do is I put a little printf in front here and kind of preview what this looks like. So we're going to go ahead and preview that rather than running it. And so I'm going to quit out of here and we're going to see what we get. So we're going to build this out. Whoops. I forgot with my printf. I have to add a little /n at the end so that we get a nice printout. Okay. So we're deleting all of the how domains works. That's not what we wanted at all. How domains work. Oh, I made a mistake. Let's go back in. So we only got one file here. Let me make sure I'm opening this up so we can take a look at everything that's happening. All right. So what did I do wrong? Did you see this? You probably saw this. I've got my article here, which I have mentioned up here, but I have my file here. So what I need to do is make sure that I'm using my article. Now the problem that we have is my article should not have the .md extension, and we also don't want the src in front of it. But if we use my file, let me go ahead and comment out all of these. If we use my file, the way the list of files is going to be is with the path. So let's do this. Printf my file. Put a little new line there for us. Oops. Okay. You see, that's what the variable looks like. So let's go back in there. And I'm just going to tell you, what we need to use is a command called basename. So basename, the way that we call commands in a script inside of a string is we use a $sign and then an open paren. So $sign open paren, basename, and then we're going to close that off there. Whoops, I don't know why that's jumping all around. Sorry about that. Okay, so what we have here is that the string, because it's a double quote, it can have variables and it can have commands inside of it. So it's going to call basename on my file. And what that's going to do is it's going to strip away the src/. And basename can also strip away a suffix. So if you tell the suffix that you want it to get rid of, which in our case, whoops, I'm sorry that that's jumping around, is .md, then it will also get rid of that. So now, if we print this out, what we should see is just the name part of the file without the extension or the directory. So that's what we're going to look at here. Okay, and you can see that we've got that. That's awesome. And we're going to get rid of the index file, because we're going to be generating that in just a second. But for now, we'll leave it. Okay, so now that I know that this is correct, because I tested it with printf, I'm going to get rid of the new line at the end. And now I'm going to assign my article equals what ends up being each of those names that we just saw. Now, every time the loop runs, my article is being reassigned. So it's always different in each cycle of the loop for every file that's in the list. So it's creating the list, and it's saying for one item in the list, which we're going to call my file as a variable, do this thing. All right. So next, let's make sure before we actually run or remove that that's working correctly, that the output looks right. And then I'm just going to put here a little printf with the article name. Let's see. Added my article HTML. Because we're going to get rid of this print statement and we want to be able to see what we're creating. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to run that bash build.sh again, and we can see this is what it would do. It would run rough, how domains work, That's exactly what we want. We want it to delete the file every time before we add stuff to the file. Otherwise, we'd just be adding more and more and more to the file every time we run it. We don't want to do that. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that there and get rid of the little slash in at the end, but we still need our quotes. So there's our rumrough. We're going to get rid of the HTML file. We're going to add, we're going to print that we add the HTML file. Let's say adding. There we go. And then we're going to convert from Markdown to HTML. And that is going to give us our blog. All right, so here we go. We see that all those files came into existence. We can see the output right there. Now we just need to replace the index.html because we want this to be auto-generated. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it from the source file. Oops. And we're going to go back into the build.sh. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get rid of index.html. And we're going to get rid of, actually, we don't need to get rid of that one yet. I'm going to save that for later. So we need to get rid of index.md because we're going to create one. So we need to get rid of it first. And the rf, we'll get rid of it whether or not it currently exists. All right. So from here, we need to kind of think what this file should look like. We just need to recreate what we already had, essentially. So we're going to have AJ's blog. Oops, I got a problem here. We have an apostrophe, which is a single quote inside of single quotes, and that's throwing everything off. So what we actually have to do is we have to close the first quote group. We have to escape a single quote, and then we have to have a second quote group. It's AJ's blog. Now I put these spaces here just to kind of help you see. There's one grouping, and then there's a quote, and then there's another grouping. So this is how we handle that situation. So that's not a double quote, that's two single quotes. So that's what we got there. We want to say AJ's blog. We're going to put a couple of new lines, and we're going to add that to index.md. And then for each line in our loop, we want to add the article to the index. So let's go ahead and we're going to change this. Now we're going to need to use double quotes because we need to put a variable inside. And we're going to have the title of the link be my article. And then we're going to have the path to the link be /myarticle.html. Now before I told you, I think I already told you, normally we would put the https:// in front, but when it's on our own site, we can put the path that's relative to the page that we're on. So we're creating an index.html in that same directory, the / are the other files, so we can just use / and then we add the .html back on because that's what we're creating. We're creating from the Markdown file a .html file. All right. And then with that, I think we need to put a new line at the end. Don't want to forget that. And we probably want to make this look like a list. Now, one problem that we're going to encounter, I'm going to go ahead and run this so we can see us encountering it and then the script failing from an error, is we want to put a dash in front of every article just like we had before. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and we're going to get an error with it. Okay, you can see it says invalid option, talking about the dash there. This is pretty common. So what we need to do, because printf actually can take some arguments with dashes, so what we need to do is tell it with a special option. There is the dash dash option. The dash dash option is pretty much universal. It tells the program, don't look for any other options anymore. Everything that comes after this is literally what I want it to be. We literally want there to be a dash in what we're printing. So we put the dash dash to let printf know, don't look for dashes anymore. Okay, so now we're going to run that. Okay, and then I'm going to cat our index.html, or our index.md. Let's see what it looks like. This looks about like what we're expecting it to be. So now we're auto-generating our blog listing. So let's go ahead and go back in here. And the last thing we need to do is convert that index.md into Markdown. So we'll go ahead and remove the index.html, whether it exists or not. And then let me just copy this. And I'm just going to get rid of the variable part, which means that we can use, there's no variables, so now we can use single quotes. So I'm going to switch over to single quotes. In fact, looks like we don't have to use quotes at all because we don't have any special characters in this. So we could go quoteless. All right, and there we are. So now I have a script that builds our website. Let me hit Command K to clear that out. I can run bash build.sh. Oh, there's only one thing. I put an SRC in there and it's not supposed to have it. So let's open that back up. I'm going to go down and I'm going to get rid of that and put a // instead. There we go. So now it's going to read from the index file we created. And you know what? We can actually get rid of the Markdown file because we're generating it automatically. We can get rid of the Markdown file after we create it. So let's run that one more time. All right, there we are. Now we can look at our index.html, and that's our new blog. I'm going to go ahead and preview that for us. So let me open up index.html. Here we are, and we can see we can click around just like we could before. We can get to all of this. And that was thanks to being able to use variables and loops. So let's just take one more look at this. I'm going to kind of space it out so we can go back over line by line one more time. So before we create a file, before we add something to a file, we want to make sure that the file doesn't exist. Otherwise, we're adding over top of something we already had. So the first thing we do is we're going to remove our index file, and then we're going to add to that index file again with the title of the blog and some new lines. Then we're creating a pattern that's going to match the source directory and all of the files inside of that directory. And it's going to go over them one by one, and it's going to call each of them my file. So the do is what kicks off the loop here. And we're taking that my file and we're using the base name command to strip away the prefix, the src / any path prefix, and also to strip away the given suffix. So it knows how to strip away the prefix because it just keeps on looking for slashes, and when it finds the last one, or it doesn't find any, then it stops. And it just eats everything up to the last slash, or nothing if there's no slashes. And then it knows what to eat from the suffix from the back because that's whatever we tell it to. And we're putting this, if we were to run say base name, my file MD like this, this would output the name that we wanted to the screen, but we don't want to output it to the screen. We want to be able to assign it to a variable. So we need to put it in quotes and then put it in a $ parentheses so that it will run, and then we can assign that to our variable. Then we're just doing a little bit of cleanup. If an article exists by the name that we're about to create, we want to go ahead and remove it. And then we're going to print out to the screen that we're adding that article. We go ahead and run comrack just like we did before, but we're using a variable this time. And then we've got our printf that is adding a line to our index file. And it looks kind of complex, but let's just break that back down. What would this look like before? How domains work. How domains work. Right? So this is what it would have looked like. So we're just replacing the how domains work with our variable. So not so fancy. And then we've got the double dash so that printf doesn't get confused when it sees the first thing is a dash and think, oh, that's a dash. I should do something special. That we say double dash means don't do anything special. Then we remove our existing index file, if any. We run the index file that we created as Markdown. We run comrack on that to convert it to HTML. And then we remove our temporary Markdown file and we're done. That's it. So hopefully that was a really practical example of how to use variables and loops in Bash. If you've got any questions, if anything wasn't clear, please comment below. Particularly, it'd be great if you comment in the playlist video rather than the live video, but you can do either. Go on over to YouTube from the link in the description. Click on the Beyond Code Bootcamp playlist and you'll see this video there. And let's see what else we got. Yeah, if you want to keep watching the live videos, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're interested in my little lifestyle daily shower thoughts channel that's called Health, Wealth, Commitment, you can subscribe to that. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit me up with questions. I hope you have an excellent night.